All
Okay,
right,
so then
we are live. We are live, everybody. We are live on Facebook. Greetings, everyone. Every discussion we have on Conversations with DB is incredible, but today is extra special. We will talk about a subject that is extremely sensitive. Many people attempt to avoid this conversation. That's right. Today, we are talking about the R word. I know you heard of the F word. I know you heard of the C word. I know you heard of the S word and even the B word, but no word is more polarizing than the R word, which is reparations. And we have some very special guests with us. We have a distinguished group of highly educated Black men, their family men, their community leaders. They are world changers. They are known as the Iron Men. And so we're honored to have them on Conversations with DB. This conversation is for everyone, including those on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And especially those on Facebook, I encourage you, I implore you to leave your questions in the Facebook chat, and I will go and grab those questions and I would bring it to the Zoom Conversation with DB. And so we're extremely excited. We encourage you to leave your questions in the Facebook comment section and also share the Facebook link. Let the world know that this group of highly distinguished men are having this great conversation. We encourage you to share it on Facebook and post your questions. So without further ado, I'd love to bring to the virtual stage none other than DB, Dwayne Bryant.
Jefferson! Hey man, no matter how I'm feeling, whenever you give your introductions, it always gets me pumped up. My energy and everything is going. So Iron Man, how you brothers doing today?
Man,
Doing great.
Excellent. My friend Asha, she's straight from the west coast of Africa. She said, when are you guys coming on? Because she has a distinguished group of ladies that she works with, that she communicates with. They're going to be on as well. So Asha, I'm going to send a shout out to you. Please feel free to come in, chime in, hit us with your questions, and we'll make sure that we will get back to you all as quickly as we can. So today we are talking about reparations. It is absolutely a topic that can and might and has divided our nation once again. It's a topic that makes people angry. It makes people happy. It makes people confused. Some people don't even really know what it means. So today it is my pleasure. I was having a conversation with my brothers and I said, listen, why don't we just go live and just have this conversation? It's not that we will have all of the solutions today. It's not that we'll have all of the program and all of the language together, but this is a conversation that we're having to see, should we be having this conversation? Is this conversation a necessary and a worthy conversation? If so, why? So what we're going to do in round one, I'm dividing it into 5 different rounds. Round one, we're going to have the gentlemen to introduce themselves. This is what I need from you guys. Tell us your name. What is your education level? What is your marital status? You just never know who's watching and what they're thinking. And what are your careers? So David, you are my top left-hand corner. We're going to start with you.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, listeners. My name is David Cole. I am first and foremost a proud father of 2 remarkable young men. My son Akil is a incoming freshman at Georgetown University. My son Khalil is a junior at Florida International University. And I am also a lifelong educator. I'm in my 29th year of working in higher education. I currently am the director for a program called College Impact, which is a partnership between the Department of Education, U.S. Department of Education, Dade County Public Schools, the nonprofit After School All-Stars, and our alma mater, DB, Florida International University.
Balls up, baby!
I also serve as the president of the board of directors for my church, the Universal Truth Center Better Living, and I'm just glad to be here.
All right, thank you. Does anybody tell you look like Frederick Douglass? Because it looked like we got some reincarnates coming on.
I will receive that. Oh, you said education.
Actually, as I look at this panel, we got Frederick Douglass. We got Marcus Garvey. We already know who Marcus Garvey is. We got Elijah Muhammad. And I don't know, Pat just so doggone strong. He just all black, man. That's Malcolm X something right there. I'm sorry, guys. James, can you please tell us who you are?
All right, well, my name is James Borishade. I'm the CEO of Circle Urban Ministries, the founder of Mission Driven Manhood, and the author of the book, The Governing Rules of Dating and Relationships. I serve on the board of directors for the Northern Illinois University College of Liberal Arts and Science. I am a proud music producer. You can find me sitting in the studio 95% of the time. I'm not doing other things. I am a PhD candidate with Christian Bible Institute and Seminary, and the proud father of 3 and a soon-to-be off-the-market man.
Oh, wait a minute!
Shanda Baha. Hallelujah.
So I don't want to give nobody's name, but is that special person somewhere around there right now?
You don't want to give Dominique's name?
Hey, I know she over there, so tell her to give us a quick wave. I know she in there somewhere.
She's watching from another room.
She watching. Okay, all right. But tell her that we're sending our love for her. All right. Amen. Thank you, Marcus Garvey, reincarnate. Elijah Muhammad, it is time for you, brother Dr. John Artis. Who are you?
I'm Dr. John Artis. I'm a chiropractor by trade. I also just a lifelong advocate of health. You know, gut health mainly, spinal hygiene, making sure you're taking good care of your body so you can get the maximum output out of it. Just a lover of my people, man. Just wanting equal health care for everybody.
So let me ask you this question. In the era of COVID-19, how do you feel about the disproportionate amount of Black people who are dying from this virus? And is it something that we could have done to prevent it as a people?
It is. It's due to a lot of the times lack of education, the lack of access to proper food and nutrition in our neighborhoods. It's also due to the lack of just not taking care of our bodies, just generational way we've been taught to eat and not eating properly. You know, simple ways that we can change these things.
Okay.
I want to change that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I know you are one of the greatest chiropractors in the state of Illinois as well. Shout out to that. Next, we have reincarnate Patrice Lumumba and Nkrumah all together in one. Brother Patrick, tell us who you are.
Hey, that is a good, I'll take that. That's real good. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Patrick Stephen. I am a proud father of 5 and a husband of almost 21 years now.
Woo! Wait a minute. They told me that Black men do not take care of their families, and all of y'all got families and children and you look healthy. Wait a minute. How is that possible? I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Please continue.
No, it's all good. You know, Flavor Flav used to say it best. Don't believe the hype.
Oh.
Ready today.
Y'all got Pat loaded for bear. He ready to go.
And he coming out. Oh.
He's coming out hard already.
So moving along. I have a bachelor's degree in biological sciences, a master's degree in computer science. I'm a software engineer for 19 years now. I'm also a professor of computer science, an associate professor. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about is providing STEM instruction. So I'm partnered with a company, with a group out of Elgin called One, Our Neighborhoods Empowered. And we have a program there where we provide instruction and introduce youth to STEM, more specifically programming. And it's really youth who are underrepresented and underexposed within technology. I'm also a technology innovator and entrepreneur. So that's what I do with my time.
I like that. And rumor has it that you have a new product that may revolutionize the way people go to events, people manage crowds and all of that stuff. Can you tell us anything about it or not so much?
I heard the same
not much more than what you just said, but definitely look for it toward the end of this year. I'll have an announcement. Maybe we'll have another session.
Woo, that's exciting. So America and wherever you may be, as you see right here, just this panel dispels the myth of what the Black man in America looks like, talks like, speaks like, think like, feel. So today what we want to do is have a real intelligent conversation about reparations. My name is Dwayne Bryant. I'm the president and founder of Innovator International. My specialty is the young people. I love everything children. We've mentored and motivated over 30,000 young people in the last 23 years. And anything that connects and affects them is something I want to be involved in. So today's conversation is going to be very powerful. So if you can, share it right now on any device you are on, call your friends, text your friends, tell them to tune in, because the Iron Men are going to break it down. So the first question, and anyone can take it, is I want you to define reparations. What is reparations? And do you think in 2020 it is fair for reparations to be distributed in some kind of way to the African-American community? And if so, why? What is reparations? Is it fair in 2020? We had a Black president, racism is over, right? And why?
Wow.
David Cole, you go ahead and take it.
Sure. I think your mention of President Barack Obama as an example of reparations, as Mitch McConnell said, is a good example. President Obama demonstrated that racism is alive and well. Basically, what reparations are is when a system or government does something to repair a grievance of its population. And of course, that grievance is 244 years of chattel slavery and another 150 years of Jim Crow, black codes and whatnot. It's not a matter of whether it's fair or not. The bottom line is it's necessary. We have a rift in this nation that cannot be closed unless we take systemic action. So I know we'll talk a little later about what it should look like, but for me, reparations have to be fundamental changes in the system that allow for those repairs to take place. And it's extraordinarily complicated, but at the end of the day, until we acknowledge that wound and until we take structural steps to close it, this country is never going to be whole.
So let me ask you this question. Is it enough to acknowledge it? What if the government under President Trump says, hey, we acknowledge slavery, it was terrible, just like you said, 250 years of slavery, 99 years of Jim Crow, another 50 years or whatever of black codes or whatnot. Is that enough to acknowledge it?
No, I didn't mention my educational background, and it's germane here. My undergrad is English and computer science with a concentration in psychology, and my master's is in higher administration with a concentration in counseling. And both those concentrations are for trauma therapy. If a person's been traumatized, it is extraordinarily important for them to acknowledge the trauma. It is important for them to get some acknowledgement from the person that traumatized them if possible, but that's only the start. Then you have to take reparative action. So that's only the start to say that this happened. Not enough.
Got it. Thank you. All right. Patrick, I think you're ready. I see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you talk about reparations, so yeah, I agree with what was just said. You know, the root word there is to repair. And so if you look at historically, like what the whole conversation about 40 acres and a mule, right? You know, that could have been a tool to repair, because if you look at what happened, right, you have all these people who were now set free and were released into a capitalistic system, but we didn't have anything that was, you know, the means of production. And capitalism is fundamentally about who owns the means of production, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you release a people into a capitalistic system and they don't have a means to produce, of course they're going to become a consumer class, right? So when we talk about reparations, a lot of time people talk about money. Money is really a means of consumption. And so I guess we probably will get into this later. It's definitely necessary. Black people have been a consumer class, you know, from the beginning, and we continue to be till today. And I think that's part of what we have to be able to accomplish when we talk about repairing our condition.
So then are you suggesting that Black people have become a consumer class based on the conditions in which they've been put into by being enslaved, the systems that have kept us suppressed, oppressed, depressed? That's why we're a consumer class, because the system has created this. And are you saying the system has to uncreate?
Well, I mean, it has a lot to do with it, right? So we never had that we didn't get started on that right foot. And I think, you know, in a capitalistic system like we have here in America, it's important that some of us are able to produce things, to find ourselves in a position where we own the means of production, right? And so we don't have that. And I think that the definition of reparations needs to be something that's aimed at accomplishing that.
Got it. And you said something before, you said 40 acres and a mule. I hear that a lot. What is 40 acres and a mule for the people who may not know? What are you talking about?
Well, it's really like it's the original, I guess, proposal, if you will, of what reparations would have looked like, right? And the reason why I think that makes sense at that point in time is because if you give me a field, if you give me a mule, those are tools that I can use to produce something, right? And once I have that, now I can build on it. And, you know, we all understand the time value of money. And so how much more does time have value when you own the means of producing things, right? And so over generations, that can compound itself. And so, you know, what is the equivalent of that today? It's not necessarily money. Money is a means to consume things, right? We need money if we're going to be able to consume things. We need the means of production. So we're at the bottom of the capitalistic triangle, right? And so to be able to move up to the top, we've got to own some means of production.
So before I go to the next brother, so question, you're saying the means of production is a way to elevate the economic social status of a people. And therefore, if the system has produced those means to not produce and we're consumers, but then if you get reparations, aren't you just going to go consume and spend money and not produce?
Well, again, yeah, I mean, I don't think that cash is necessarily always going to be used for consuming, right? That comes down to whose hands it falls into. But inherently, I don't think it's a means of production, as where like a field might be, right? Something that is inherently used to produce something else, right? So if I have a field and a mule, that's obviously something I'm going to use to produce crops, right? That's what its function is. Cash is used to consume. And I mean, it can be used to purchase things and to invest in various things like that. But, you know, there's much more variation on how that can be used. And I think there's an educational component that would have to go along with that.
Man, I'm so excited about this conversation. Dr. John, you leaning in. Talk to me, brother.
Yeah, I agree totally with what Pat was saying, piggybacking off that. I would go another level and say ownership. I mean, it's very rare that you see Black businesses own for over 8 years. You know, typical lifespan of a business to be successful, they say it's over 7 years. But then also not only to be owned past 8-year period, but to also be transformed into another generation. That's something we don't see. The two things that I would say what reparations look like to make amends would be, I would say healthcare number one, because without health, you can't do anything. And we're dying at a disproportionate rate from just conditions that could easily be prevented if we just had the education and the will to want to do better. As far as high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, metabolic syndrome, pretty much, waistlines being bigger, you know, people were saying, fatten up, you too skinny, you know, and now all of a sudden that's turned into a point where we're overweight a lot of times. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why we're having such a harder time with COVID, just because of those inflammatory diseases. Not only that, they actually shorten our lifespan. The thing, the real issue too is that African-American men have the lowest life expectancy in the world.
In the world?
In the world. And not only that, in the United States, we also die at a faster rate. Like they're giving us almost to, I think the last study I read was like 72, 73, you know, average. And then the second lowest life expectancy is African-American women. And then you look at the types of foods that we're eating, you look at the lifestyles, you know, you're starting to see conditions pop out that we never even used to consider that will be affecting us. Now they're starting to affect us in our teenage years. You know, you're starting to see girls developing these conditions that's having them giving a hard time with, you know, having children and so forth. So there's a lot of different things that's happening from that point. And then the second thing I would say too is education. You know, we got to get back to being innovative. We got to get back to innovation. We got to get back to creating stuff. If you look at a lot of the things that were invented, by African Americans when we had control of our education systems, which I'm a proud graduate of HBCU.
Which one?
North Carolina A&T State University, the largest HBCU right now, one of the fastest growing, and one of the best, and actually puts some of the best engineers in the world. You know, so one of the things, known for engineering. And
I've never heard that. Well, give us the name again. Give us a shout out.
North Carolina A&T State University. A&T stands for Agricultural and Technical State University. So they taught agriculture and technology, because that's one of the ways that we can sustain our own. If we can control our food, and then we can also develop the technology to keep us innovative, we can create new ideas and we can create new things. You don't hear about as many African Americans inventing stuff as we did before, when we had the lack of, when we didn't control our education. And so that's one of the big components I've had to say with too. We have to get back to education, and this new generation, we got to really hit them to go into these HBCUs, not only going to the HBCUs, but just going to college and learning different kinds of trades. Everybody's not going to be a lawyer. Everybody's not going to be a doctor, but we need people that can actually be electricians. We need plumbers. We need all these different things that I don't see that being a heavily populated field for African Americans anymore. You know,
let me ask you,
go ahead.
Sorry, but what does that have to do with reparations? I agree, we need everything you said, but what does that have to do with reparations?
We need to make it not as difficult for us to get into these programs.
Got it.
With the mentorship, a lot of kids can't get in these programs because they can't simply afford it.
Okay.
You know, when you go to get an apprentice, better yet, not even just talking about college, when you go to get an apprenticeship, you know, now the prices are going up and up and up. And you're like, man, I can't afford it, you know, and I'm sitting up here like, man, if you could just get past this, if we can figure out some kind of way that you can actually get this. And then going to college, we come out of college with such astronomical debt. Brothers, I had a friend that's a high-level executive at Ernst & Young, and they had this really sharp sister that came out of college. They had to give her a raise to keep her so she could afford to pay her student loans. I don't know if you've looked at what some of the rates to some of the amount of money these kids are paying in student loans now in this generation. Some kids are paying $2,000 a month. Some kids are paying a little bit more. And then when you get these advanced degrees, you make all this money, but a lot of that's going to pay off a lot of debt.
Interesting. So then reparations could help the young people get to college, not necessarily have to be indebted. So therefore they can produce, as what Brother Patrick just said. Okay, James, sorry, brother, last but not least, define reparations, and do you think it's necessary in 2020, and is it fair?
So when I look at reparations, I'm similar. My definition is very similar to Pat's. It is the ability to repair that which was either stolen or broken. And so the question is, do I think it's necessary? That's a tricky question. And here's why I say it's a tricky question. If the system is broken, then it should be repaired. But if the system isn't broken, it will not be repaired. And so the question is the system currently that is in place doing what it's designed to do? Or is it broken? And if the answer is the system is broken, then reparation or reparation needs to take place. And
here's my question. Is the system broken?
From my vantage point, the system is absolutely broken.
Okay. From the vantage point of the people who created the system, is it broken?
From the vantage point of the system the people who created the system, it's not broken. That's why reparation has not taken place to this day. It's not broken. It's doing exactly what it's designed to do. In a capitalistic society, you must have a producer and you must have consumers. If no one is a consumer, the capitalistic system is broken. And they do not want the system broken. They would rather have the people broken.
So can you consume or create consumers without enslaving them?
Yes, you can. But when the goal of capitalism is to produce a profit for stockholders or for investors. And so the larger the profit, the better the capitalist. And so you cannot produce astronomical profits without taking advantage. I won't use the word enslave. I'm just going to use the word taking extreme advantage of a group of people.
So would you consider the Africans who were enslaved in the Americas, were they taken advantage of?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So then round 3, man, we're moving already. Who should be responsible for reparations? How shall it be distributed? Do we give all Black people a check, some cash, some money? Do we put it on a grocery card? How does this happen? Who's responsible? Why are they responsible? And how does it get distributed? Who, why, how?
So can I take that one?
Yes.
For me, the African American population needs to be responsible for ensuring reparations take place. And what I mean by that is the system that we are currently saying is broken, we had no hand in designing. So if we want the system to be repaired, you must have a seat at the table. Remember, back in the day, they used to say no taxation without representation. Well, we are being taxed and we have not been represented. And I don't care which party you ascribe to or subscribe to, we are not being represented. So if you ask me, who should be responsible for reparations? We should be responsible for ensuring that the system that is broken is repaired. And that's a different kind of answer than I've heard most Black people say. Well, it's our responsibility.
So time out. How can it be your responsibility if you don't own nothing and you're a consumer, like Pat said? Consumers don't repair anything. They consume.
See, all of us are not consumers. Those of us who are not consumers need to be sitting with those of us who are, and we need a game plan. We had we had an African American president for 8 years and did not ask for anything.
Okay. All right. David, who, how, when?
We're all responsible. We're Americans. The bottom line is, I know people don't want to hear that, but and we're different, we're responsible in different ways. I agree with James in that we have to take a lead to determine what that looks like. Like I mentioned to you, I work for a grant, but here's the thing. That grant was written by a former mentee of mine who understood that the public school system was not properly positioning students of color properly. So he designed the program, right? And then we got federal money, and then he brought me on the team, and we're doing it. So the bottom line is, and the approach that we take in that is a reparation type of a thing. Yes, so you're not going to ask somebody who oppressed you for 401 years to fix it. You're going to have to demand it. But we need people both inside and outside of systems in order to make this thing work. And so our churches are responsible, our schools are responsible, our private industry are responsible. Dwayne, what you do in Intervision International is almost identical to what I'm currently doing in College Impact. I'm doing it in system, you're doing out of system. But you get a flexibility that I might not get to have, but I have an access to governmental resources you might not get to have. We both are responsible for creating those pathways that Dr. John was talking about from an educational standpoint. We represent less than a third of the population, but at the end of the day, if we don't take a lead in creating the dynamics of reparation, then people will continue to suffer. And James, you are right. This system is doing exactly what it was designed to do. But I will say this, Japan is a highly capitalistic society, but they do not have a permanent underclass of people that they had enslaved for 244 years. So capitalism and human justice and human rights can coexist.
All right. Pat, did you answer it yet?
Yeah, no. So I agree with most of what I've heard. I'll take it from the last comment that David just said. I definitely agree. I think there's a form of capitalism that's very much a parasitic form. And, when I think about capitalism, I think about, like fire. Fire is a very essential ingredient to life, for us. And so, but fire is good when it's operating within certain bounds, like a fireplace, right? The reason why we have a fireplace is because we don't want the flames to get outside of this controlled area because it will engulf everything, right? So when you look at slavery, when you look at colonialism, and you look at everything that's happened since then, those are just really just fruits on the tree of a parasitic form of global capitalism, right? And so,
don't say anything, Jefferson. We got to get to Brother John first, because whenever Jeff comes in, that means we got some hot fire on Facebook or Twitter or whatever is coming in. So hold on, Jefferson, hold those thoughts. Finish up, Pat. We're gonna go to Dr. John.
So I think when we talk about to your question specifically, I think that everybody has pointed out to this point, right? Like the challenge of the system doing what it's designed to do, and those who put it in place are obviously not going to be in favor of helping, right? And so I think that's where education comes in. We have to view this as a generational pursuit. The fact that we haven't had reparations till now underscores the point that it is a generational pursuit. So with that in mind, right, I think that we need to seize the moment. Right now, we need to make educational reforms so that people can understand the connection between our historical past, the historical context as to why reparations make sense, right? And so I think a lot of what you see now is when you bring up reparations, people ask the very question you asked, like, why should we have it? Why does it make sense? And unless we create the backdrop that that we're living in, unless we form that context in people's minds, that's going to be a hard conversation to have. And so we find ourselves at that point right now, because we don't have it. So we need educational reform as kind of like a foundation to build this upon. But then I think obviously we have a hand in that, and we should be foremost the ones who care about it. But we do need to look at those who benefited from it. And when I say that, I'm talking about, if there are corporations who exist today that directly benefited from or continue to benefit from the systems that oppress and that have their roots in those type of exploitative practices, then we should hold them accountable. And
is it the corporations who benefited and the systems from slavery?
From slavery on up, and
1619 to 1865, or should we also look at the Black Code? Should we also look at Jim Crow?
We should look at all of it, because if you look at even till today, right, we have mass incarceration as an issue. Mass incarceration is another branch on a parasitic capitalistic tree, right? And so companies that benefit from that, of course, they should take part in the repair that particular system is the damage that it's creating right now in our communities.
Okay.
That's just a fact. And so the mass incarceration, the prison industrial complex is really an extension of slavery. So when we understand that, then we can say, like, clearly, this is somebody who we should hold accountable for contributing to the reparations of our people.
So I'm hearing you say anyone, any system, any business, any individual that contributed to the enslavement of the African is also directly responsible for creating the solution of the reparation to repair what was done. Is that?
Mm-hmm. I would say they're more indirectly responsible. Yeah. I mean, most of the people are not directly doing it now, but if you've come through a lineage that causes you to be in a position of privilege now because of that, and I'm talking about businesses, right? I'm not talking about the average Joe in the street, like our neighbors and stuff like that. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about big business, the parasitic capitalists who have taken advantage of that system. They should be in part responsible for funding it. But again, it starts with education, and we have to be the drivers, as everyone has said up to this point.
Okay, Dr. John, what do you think?
I think it's everybody's part. I don't think it's just our part, but I think we have to get together as Black people, and we have to decide on what we want. I think that it's a broad question, but then also too, I think we need representation in the system that's being designed, and that's when we have lack of representation, you get what's dished out to you. One of the things I'm a big fan of the Bible, and it says, without a vision, the people should perish. So what is the vision from this point forward? If you don't have a vision for your own life, somebody's gonna have you in a plan, and they got a vision for your life. And I think that's where the African American community has found themselves recently is that we're part of a big system. Until we get representation, until we have seats at that table, And if we can't get seats at that table, we have to create our own table.
So then let me ask you this. The stats on segregation and desegregation, in many matrix, Black people were better off when they were segregated. Black people were better off. They owned more businesses. They had more land when they were segregated. So is a part of reparations to also usher in segregation, or not necessarily, or and both, or either or?
I think it go either or. I think that's where the other side comes into play. That's why I think it's everybody's part. Now we're so we're so intertwined to the point where it's hard to segregate everybody. But I think just with a lot of what we saw in these last riots was a true sign that people
demonstrations.
And people are tired of what's going on and they want to see change. They're coming together. I've yet to see, and it was a beautiful thing to see, that we're doing the demonstrations, white and Black people coming together was like, look, we've had enough. That's a clear enough sign that we can come together at a table and take the people that's on that side and come up with some kind of solution.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question, because I agree. Why are white folk as angry and demonstrating as passionately as the Black folk? This is, Martin Luther King was assassinated, Rodney King was beaten, George Floyd, who knew George Floyd? So what happened this time to activate white people to say enough is enough, in your opinion?
Well, I think everybody sees what's going on. And I think sometimes people say, hey, that's some BS, man. We can't let that happen anymore. And then we're, like I said, you're seeing more interracial marriages. You're seeing a lot of other different things right here. So everybody's in this one big melting pot now. And they're starting to be indirectly affected by it, whether they believe it or not. And so it's to the point now where it's like, hey, we got to stand with our brothers and sisters and fight for some kind of equality, some kind of make the playing field somewhat level, which I don't think it would ever be in our lifetime.
Okay. All right. So Brother Jefferson, he's going to come in because apparently there's been some questions on Facebook or wherever we're streaming live right now. Brother Jeff, where are you, man? What you got for us?
Yes, sir. And I must say, this is a very powerful conversation, and our Facebook family agrees as well. DB always gets a lot of love. So we got Bryant who's saying, DB! Always getting love. So we have some great questions. I'll read a couple. We have a question from Henry McGee. He asks, what form should reparations take in our country? Money, land, education, or all of the above? And I know you all answered that, but if you all can answer it again for those guests who are just coming on, that would be appreciated. We also have a comment from Ray Dotch II. This person said, just a suggestion. Instead of paying out reparations, make it so Black folks don't pay any taxes, income, state, property, estate, or sales taxes for the same amount of time our ancestors were denied compensation and equal opportunities that were given to our white counterparts. Additionally, all state colleges and universities should be free during the same time frame. We have other comments, but that was heavy, so I'll just drop those on y'all right now.
Yeah. I appreciate it. First of all, let me say that Henry McGee, Beate, if you're listening, send Henry McGee an email link because he may be good to come in. Henry McGee is the black man's black man in Chicago. Very well respected, very prolific thinker. He'd be awesome in this conversation. So that is a good question, guys. What does it look like? Does it come in money? Does it come in land? Do we get the 40 acres and a mule? Does it come in free college education? What does it look like? What does it look like? Because we know it's a cost to it, but what does it look like?
Well, I will say this. If you look at I recently read a study, the average amount of time that a dollar stays in the African-American community is very short. So I definitely don't think it should be money. I think it should be some form of education. I believe in the saying that if you teach a man to fish, he'll be able to fish for a lifetime. But if you just give him fish, he'll be able to eat for a day. So I believe in being able to teach people to live for a lifetime, and encouraging them to actually teach their seeds and their kids how to do that as well.
Okay, I like that. Pat, James?
So I got something to say on this one. I think in my mind, I envision that there are really two phases, right? There are two components to this whole thing. Again, it's repairing. And so for me, the goal of it would be to reverse the condition of us being largely a consumer class, right? So I think there's one phase where, we strive to get on, quote, equal footing, right? And so some of the things that are systemic in our culture, we should be reversing those things. So when we talk about mass incarceration, education disparity, and the whole litany of features, I guess they are features, not bugs, but the whole litany of things that are plaguing our community and cause us to have some encounter some very serious challenges when we try and move ourselves upward. So those things, we would want to tear those systems down. So that's step one, but that still doesn't get us to be in a position where we own the means of production, right? So in order to do that, we would need to invest in programs, right? So we need to have things like, for example, in technology, tech incubators and accelerators, right? That are specifically targeting our communities, so that people can have mentorship, so that they can have access to investment, so that we can start creating some of that innovation that Doc John talked about, and have those kinds of things coming out of our communities, right? So that's one example. Small business development programs, things like that. So these are some of the things that I think can begin to put us into a different class, if you will. So I think it's really like a two-phased thing. I definitely don't think money is the answer, but I think it takes money to do some of the things we're describing here.
Man, you just made all my cousins mad because they were like, the Iron Man gonna get us paid.
One of the things when you look at philanthropic efforts, and they're studying this deeply, what they've found is that when you go to Africa, and I know there are different cultures, and you give money to those people, they actually do more than when you go and open a school for them, dig a well for them. The people do things. One good example is they have this program where they give an American $500, give it to this villager. He buys a motorcycle. So the people looking at it, these are Europeans. Oh, he's buying a motorcycle. He uses it to transport goods for himself and other businesses. And at night, he uses the engine as a generator for other places. So I want to say that this idea that if you give people money that's going to blow it, some of that is bias. Most of us, if you gave us money, just gave us straight cash, will invest it in future. So I'm going to say it won't be malappropriated, but it won't be enough to appropriate. That's one thing. Secondly, it's a combination of things. We look at the creation of Israel. The creation of the modern nation of Israel is the greatest reparation project in the history of mankind. They gave a group of people a nation. The world gave a group of people their own country as reparations for the Holocaust. You can call it whatever it is. That was a reparation. And so then what did the Israelites do, right? The Israelis do. They created the law of return, the right of return. Anybody from anywhere in the world that's a Jew can come and become an instant citizen, right? And then what did they do? They created economic and educational empowerment zones. One of the best educational success stories in this country is the Harlem Empowerment Zone, created by Jefferson County. And it's a multi-generation program. So reparations can look like that you create empowerment zones in these disenfranchised communities where you incentivize businesses to invest and to train people, and those people build into their communities. And further than that, instead of sending white-collar white folks to prison, you send them to have to work in those empowerment zones to pay off their debt to society.
You said something very interesting, because I was listening to Bob Johnson, the first Black millionaire in America, and he said there is nothing wrong with giving direct payments, because he said when you look at the major killings, Eric Garner in New York, if he had money, he wouldn't have been selling squares. If George Floyd had cash in his pocket, what is he looking for this $20 for? He said if you look at so many incidents where police have killed Black people, it was over petty cash. So he's saying that when you give people cash, now they can provide for their families. He was saying even the point of Black men sometimes getting stressed out, no jobs, no income. They come home, they get angry with their wife, they beat their wife. If they had money, then they could be better husbands, better fathers, better business people. Same thing with the women. They won't be as stressed. They don't have to work 3 and 4 jobs. So what you're talking about, Dr. John, their stress level can go down because they don't have to work 5 and 6 jobs. So I just heard you say something interesting, David, because honestly, I was against the money payment, but in the hands of the right person, hell, if all y'all had cash, I couldn't imagine what you would do with just the money. Doc, your business would try quadruple. Pat, your technology, you'd be opening schools, teaching kids. David, instead of working for what he's doing, it'll be his company doing it. And James will be producing, creating conscious music. So money might not be a bad solution.
But when you look at it too, we are the Iron Man. Dude, we're probably 10% of the brothers out here that I see that are doing really well. There's a whole 90, I don't even know the numbers, but the people that are struggling. You know what I'm saying? That are not doing well. And luckily, you know, I've come from, you know, a very humbling background. You know, I chose to do different paths, and I still got friends same age that are on totally different paths. It's to the point where what was missing in that point, you know what I'm saying? I think it goes back to a lack of leadership, goes back to male role models, you know, not being in the household. Yeah, I remember, I tell that story all the time. It was 7 of us grew up. None of us had fathers. None of us had fathers.
You didn't have a father?
Man, not in the house.
Really? But you had a father and such a great husband.
Man, because I got a chance. I listened to David last night with our conversation. It gave me a chance to create what I thought it should look like. I'm walking straight off of faith, brother. Like I'm literally, this is a faith walk for me. Like what I'm praying, God, guide my steps every day. What should I say? How should I move? And then it just innately comes in, and you step into that kingmanship that you're born into. That's your right. And we take care of our queens the same way. But the thing about it is we can't, if you look at now into most, this is the thing what you got to look at too. If we go back and a lot of stuff is on money, but 2, there are opportunities. I'm one of the people that took advantage of the opportunity. You know, there are opportunities, but if you don't have the right education on why you need to make that decision, it's not good. One of the things that I know, they call it they stunt if you go in the hood. So most Black people want to look rich, but don't have money. You know what I'm saying? If I give you
that goes back to Robert Kiyosaki. Rich dad, poor dad, that poor people buy liabilities because they want to look wealthy. Rich people buy assets and they don't mind looking any kind of way and driving any kind of thing because they know they have wealth.
You cannot tell me there's not an education problem when we spend majority of the money and consume the most in the United States because of our thought process and how we're wired. Right? So we have to go back and rewire that process. Yeah. We talked about investments in stocks last night. And how many of us we talked about, man, these are the kind of conversations we need to be having at our dinner table. What if we could do a video to teach other African-American males and females how to have those conversations in their households? Yeah. Because our generation, I mean, my mom worked, you know, all of a sudden we work, you go to job, you get a job, you work hard, and hopefully, luckily, you'll be able to retire one day. That wasn't the American dream for me. You know, everybody is not a John Artis, and I'm starting to see that when you have kids, you understand they're not going to be, some going to be different, some going to be different, some might be like you, but you have to respect where everybody is. And I think to that point, in basic foundation, we need to learn how to understand wealth and wealth management.
Got it. So you said something interesting. You said kingship is my right, which means when many of us were enslaved and brought here, we were already walking in our kingship and our queenship, but we were broken. Our language was stolen. Our religion was taken. Our name was destroyed. Everything about us and who we were was totally emasculated when we got to the point of, I think that if somebody's volume, and maybe, hey, you have to turn your volume on. So therefore, when we came here for 250 years, we were systematically, intentionally destroyed by a system that still did not destroy us. So in essence, we came in our kingship, but everything that the system could do to destroy us and to destroy it did the best that they could. in order to reduce us to mere animals, which is why they didn't even let us be full human beings. So then it sounds like all of you are saying that reparations, while it won't destroy the trauma, it won't get rid of the pain of our ancestors, but it is the first step to atoning. So I see the black man just came on, and he sounds like he in a loud place in Chicago. So you want to jump in real quick, Hank?
Yeah, I'm in my patio, so it's real quiet back here, so it's real chill. Man, you brothers are just knocking it out the ballpark. You said so many things that are so impactful and so interesting. I totally agree. I am of a mind that reparations should be paid in the form of cash and land. And I think cash payments can be made the same way they make monthly payments to Social Security. Those who are going to spend their money frivolously will be consumers, and those who are going to spend their money wisely will be investors. And I think the 40 acres and the mule is still something they should give when they didn't give land to African Americans, but they gave it to Europeans when they first came here. I think the 40 acres and the mule is still something that should be done. There's land all over the western parts of the United States and all over the country, period. And I think that's a great start right there. I just think that what is owed to us is owed to us. And if we start the conversation with reparations, and then we can move on from there. But just as one of the brothers said, how they gave Israel a whole country.
I never thought about that, but absolutely. And even still paid reparations, the Germans also paid.
I think that's either late 50s or early 60s when that happened. They had what I think was a 7-day war or something like that. And they finished that off real quick. They know how to do it. They know what to do and when to do it, but they just don't feel that we are worth the effort. But you brothers are really knocking out the ballpark. So I just commend you all for having this conversation. And I think this is a conversation that needs to keep going. We need to push this conversation to the halls of Congress. I know they're having it in Congress in some places, but we got to push for. And one more thing, and I'll push out there. We have to have. We got to get the vote out. We got to get the vote out, and we have to talk about voter suppression, and that's all over the South, and mostly in those Republican states and districts.
Love it. Listen, I see Brother Jeff is here, but Brother Jeff, before you go, because I know you got some, hold on 1 second, because I want to share something that I'm learning. As I'm listening to everything everybody is saying, I'm taking good notes. So reparations is the making of amends for a wrong one has done by paying money or otherwise helping those who have been wronged. I think that's a consensus on that. So the question is, who has done wrong and who was wrong? I think we all understand and agree who was wrong was the enslaved, and somebody's mute, someone has volume in the background. So this is what I compiled. The United States government has enslaved the Africans, legal system and policies, 250 years of slavery, 99 years of Jim Crow, through housing, redlining, through inferior educational system, through businesses, insurance companies where you couldn't get loans, they wouldn't back the businesses, through the criminal justice system, through mass incarceration. And there's one other thing I wanted to add too. This may not be or may be government led, but the media. After 1915, with the birth of a nation, the media has been on a full frontal assault of the Black man and woman and family. A couple of things. Since you guys mentioned Israel, I want to talk about the African Holocaust so that everyone watching this will see and understand. Millions of Africans were stolen and taken to the Americas, not just North America, but Central America, the Caribbeans, South America. Brazil had more slaves there than any other place, starting in the 1500s. In North America, from 1619 to 1865, brutal slavery is what made America great. So when anyone says, let's make America great again, what they're saying is the time that America became great was 1619 to 1865 in terms of economic status. From 1865 to 1964, brutal laws such as Black codes, Jim Crow, enhanced systems designed to ensure that Blacks never gained power. That was another 99 years. Then from 1964 to 2020, we have excessive policing, police brutality, unfair criminal sentencing, inferior education system, poor health, redlining, assassination of our leaders. Did you guys know that 30 to 40 years ago, Black men killed by police was 70% higher than it is today? So we think it's bad now. Imagine that times 70% higher, okay? So for the people who are watching real quick, we had pre-Civil War, we had slavery. America grew 60% of the world's cotton by 1840. Slavery paid a significant share of capital, iron, manufactured goods laid for the basis of the American economic growth. American economic growth is capitalism. It was built on the backs of slaves. In addition to the South, cotton production, the North benefited from it as well. So it wasn't just a Southern thing. Slavery was economically efficient. On the eve of the Civil War, America had more per capita income than Spain or Italy into the 1940s and 1960s. That's how much power slavery produced. I think someone said earlier about the Civil War, then we had the 13th Amendment, 4 million slaves are free. What do? So this is now why we have so many problems between police and community, because the original police were slave patrols, militia who was there to capture, kill Black people. And some of that is still going on today. So that I'm gonna get off of my soapbox right now, and we're gonna come back to the Iron Man. So Jeff, you have a question for us. What's going on?
Wow, that was a very, very powerful illustration. And
listen, I got that from my brother sitting right here, man. I'm like, I got to do some stuff.
Wow. So we do have some very good questions, and I would like to thank Mr. McGee for joining us. This is a great discussion. So we have a question from, here we are. We have a question from Isabel Molina. She's asking, who's paying these reparations?
Hey, tell Isabel she paying for it, and we'll go to check.
I got a quick answer. It's not just America that has to pay reparations. We're talking about the Dutch. We're talking about the Europeans. We're talking about the Spaniards. We're talking about America. We're talking about all of those countries that benefited off the backs of slavery, England as well. And so when we start talking about who should pay, we should not just be looking to Washington, D.C. We can look all over this world for those who have benefited off the back of slavery.
Wow.
Well, also,
but listen, I think it's a legitimate question to ask. Number one, who's going to pay for it? I think it's a legitimate question I think it's a legitimate statement that I've heard time and time again when they say, I didn't own a slave. Nobody in my family owned a slave. Why should I be taxed for what has happened? It was terrible what's happened, but why should I foot the bill for what's happened? And so to me, what's important is to repair the system, but repair the system, what it's doing against African Americans, but then not tilt the system so much that it now creates another oppressed population and another oppressed group. And that's what we have to be careful from. And so there are certain things that we can do today to begin to repair the system if that is truly what we're talking about. For example, the 13th Amendment, we oftentimes say it is the amendment that abolished slavery. It made Black men free, but it didn't. It made Black men free until or unless you were arrested and convicted of a crime, and then you could be a slave. You can be a servant in that regard. So
and then they criminalize every aspect of life, so that even if, think about, one of the Black codes said that you could be arrested for being unemployed. A Black preacher could be arrested for preaching to a Black congregation. So they made living a crime and then turned us into criminals and re-enslaved us.
And then
that's kind of like it is now, right? Living while Black.
Exactly. Yes. So now here's why that's critical, though. Here's why that's important. Because if you look at the education system, you can predict by third grade how many jail cells to build with remarkable accuracy.
Yes.
And so they're using reading test scores from third graders to determine how many jail cells should be built. But here's the root of that system. Then you look at the tax code and see that the state funding for education is based upon the taxes that you're able to pay in neighborhood. Well, that means poor neighborhoods are absolutely not going to be able to have good school systems. So if we don't fix the tax code,
right,
the 13th Amendment we will be having this same conversation in perpetuity 60, 70, 80 years from now. Those are the two first systems that have to be fixed, and the education system will fix itself because there will be infinitely more funding for lower income communities, and there will not be an incentive to jail African American men, or I won't even say jail, to re-enslave African American men and women.
One thing I wanted to point out, man, when you said, you know, white people have this tendency in saying that I didn't do it to y'all. It wasn't my fault. My family didn't do it. I didn't have a part of that. But these are the same white people who are on third base. They're on third base and think they hit a triple. These are the same white people who have the lily white suburban homes when they were redlining us. These are the same white people when you look at Israel, and you think about Israel as a great example, and I think David brought them up, and I appreciate that, brother. When you look at that, when they stole the art from Israel, when they stole the art, they stole the wealth from Israel.
Hank, you're on mute.
Hank, you're on mute. Time out. Hank, wait. Who could unmute Hank?
He's got it.
Got
You're back on mute.
Who muted Hank? See, it's the system. The system has come in to destroy the brother and to stop him and jam him. Oh, he was telling so much truth. God dog it. Okay, so I tell you what, Hank, that's a doggone shame. See, this is intentional that he was speaking so much truth, he got knocked out. What you saying, Jefferson?
All right, so while we're waiting on Hank to come back, we have a question or a statement from Alexi Young. She said, as for giving money directly to constituents, that's one of the issues of nonprofit land in our neighborhoods. They absorb the funds and run programs that only provide so much support. She's saying, give funds directly to people and tie it to investment strategy education as an option. And she shared a website that I'm going to put in the Zoom link. What are your thoughts?
Okay, so she's saying pay the people directly.
Yeah, she said all these nonprofits in the lands of, she said all the nonprofits in the lands of our neighborhoods, they're just receiving all of our funding that's not helping us as much as it should. So she's saying to give the money directly to people and tie it to investment strategy education.
You're on mute, Dwayne.
But you got a problem with that, because how do you fund the investment strategy education? Because let's be clear. A lot of people will say, you guys, meaning African Americans, have been asking for equality. But if you look at the system, technically, we live in a republic and not a democracy. So people could argue that it is equal, but it's not equitable. And so if you handed funds directly to people without the education, you're literally injuring them. That's like me. I've got two sons and a daughter. If I gave my son, one of my sons, or any of my children a car before they knew how to drive, I would be killing them.
Absolutely.
And so what we're talking about is listen, there are specific systems that can be fixed right now that can start to right this wrong immediately. And the fact that the 13th Amendment still allows you to enslave people is egregious. Number one, the fact that the way our schools are funded is based upon the tax code. So basically, I am going to get a better education if I live in a better neighborhood, hands down. I am going to be starting 10 miles ahead of you in a 100-mile race. That can be repaired now.
And you're saying through the tax code.
Yeah, changing tax code.
Have you ever asked yourself why a person who makes billions of dollars will spend hundreds of millions to get into an office that pays them hundreds of thousands? It is because they want to be first to understand, know, and participate in crafting the tax codes.
That's right.
Interesting.
So one thing I'd say about that too is, though, I think what the person was highlighting is that we can't just indiscriminately give money out to people, right? So I think that and I'm specifically talking about the organizations she said that have proven themselves to be ineffective. So there needs to be some kind of a track record, right? And so if you look at organizations who have a track record of accomplishing what they say they're for in those neighborhoods, then those would be candidates for these programs. So I think there are things that we need to be very surgical about how those kinds of funds would be allocated. But I do think that formula is definitely part of the overall formula, because we do need things that target specifically our people and specifically to elevate them to a certain level. So some of the things that James is talking about, again, is like what I was calling in the phase one, to eliminate those things that oppress, right? We want to eliminate those. But then from there, we also need to elevate ourselves so that we can get into the driver's seat and get into the seat of being producers. So I think they both have to happen. Programs like what she was describing, they need to be part of it only if they're producing the result that they claim to produce.
Got it. So check this out. So Isabel Molina said, who's going to pay for it? Asha, we just got a comment. It was texting to me. She's coming all the way from Africa. She said the government, not the people, should be held accountable. All European countries. She said, but it has to start in the United States Congress. She said Liberia was given something like Israel, but no financial reparations. Therefore, Liberia failed. So she must be going back to David's point that Israel succeeded because it received billions plus land and continues to receive billions. I want to show you all something real quick because David said something interesting that brought a point up. He mentioned that many of the European countries, so let's take a look at this. This is the slave trade, right? But this is the biggest enslavers right here. First, it started with Portuguese, almost 6 million. British, West Indies, Caribbean, Jamaica, North America. Spanish, South America, Central America. French, Haiti, large African colonies as well. The Dutch, and then the Danish. So this group of Europeans were the largest enslavers. That doesn't mean other people did not participate. So if you're talking about governments who pays to Isabel Molina, so she want to keep her $32.27 that she gets back from the government, her taxes. So that's fine. So then it sounds like we're saying that the government and the systems that oppress, depress the Black man and woman in America are the people who pay. Is that what you guys are saying? Or are you saying it should go to the individual taxpayer?
Well, I think what happens, the government doesn't own anything, guys. Every dime that the government spends is coming out of our pocket. So when the government spends anything, you're spending it. I and my family have paid for reparations to Japanese Americans who were put in concentration camps because they got reparations. They got over $100,000 a head. You all are paying taxes. You are still paying money to support Israel as part of the original deal. So you are paying for reparations. We are still paying money to prop up the former Soviet blocs, and we're still paying money to support Japan, who we defeated 75 years ago. So the answer to the question is, who pays for the reparations for Black people? The same government that's paying for every damn body else.
Ooh. And you're saying that these reparations, they're paying it right now. Also, slave owners who, after the Civil War, got reparated.
They did.
So therefore, reparations is not a new conversation. It just seems to be new when we're talking about repairing Black people.
All slave holders got reparations from the Union as part of the Reconstruction.
And
because they lost property. They lost property.
Right. Isn't that a kick in the face?
Yeah.
They won't give the slave the reparations, but they gave reparations to the person who lost a quote unquote slave.
Right.
Isn't that a kick in the face?
Yeah. And you know what private entities help ensure some of that? Modern day Wachovia, Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, these companies insured slave holders and helped give them their money back when they lost slavery after the Civil War. And their seed money to be the companies that they are right now comes from American slavery.
Just a real quick add to specifically what the young lady was saying. I do believe also, like if you take a global perspective, that those nations do need to be held accountable for the global impact. So if you look at the underdevelopment of Africa today, it's a direct result of the same dynamic. That slavery and colonialism are two sides of the same coin. The impact the lasting impact that it's had on the continent of Africa is huge, and even goes on till today, the exploitation. So those countries can start by stopping the exploitation that continues till now, and then there needs to be some kind of a global reparations too. But back when it comes to domestically here, I think in addition to the governmental piece, definitely the corporations that have directly benefited from this, they need to be held accountable for it.
Okay.
How do we hold these corporations accountable?
Well, let me ask you this. Netflix just gave $120 million to the to HBCUs. Is that a form of reparations? Should that be counted toward reparations?
But they also did something else. They also took out $100 million of their revenue and put that money in Black banks.
Whoa.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and many companies are doing things like that now. So in my opinion, that is a form of reparation.
Yeah.
I would argue though that things need to be done with a very specific purpose, right? So unless it's specifically targeting an initiative that changes the condition of us from being a consumer class largely to being more in the seat of, one who is owning the means of production. Unless it's doing that, then to me, it's not necessarily moving the needle when it comes to reparations. That's a good thing to do, but we have to look at it in the broader context. I don't think we can just put money in certain places, put money in the hands of Black people and say that's reparations.
Right.
It has to be, there has to be a plan behind it. And I think ultimately the objective we're striving for is reversing this thing about being a consumer class perpetually throughout the generations.
So,
all right, so we're in the last few minutes. We see Brother Jefferson. Go ahead and hit us with some questions. We're going to answer them, sound bites. Go.
All right. So Sandra McDonald, she said, how nice to see brothers come together, leading the way and strategizing. Awesomeness. Great job, DB. Love it. And she also agrees.
Hey, Sandra McDonald coming all the way from the Bahamas. Sandra, everybody on here married, so you ain't getting no husband from this girl. Get off.
Why you like this, Dwayne? All right, so she also said that investment strategy education is necessary since so many folks do not understand the strategy behind investing. So now, Isabel Molina, the young lady who asked who's paying for it, she said she can support a tax code argument. She said she witnessed parents arguing redistricting in their county because it keeps other students from other neighborhoods from getting a good education. So she agrees that tax code should be changed. All right. Okay.
That sounds good. That sounds super good. So, Sandra, don't be mad at me now, because I know Sandra gonna be like, I cannot believe you just called me out like that. This is really neat to get this feedback from Facebook. So I'm gonna ask a question, and I want to hear you guys. You got 20 seconds to answer. Starting with David, what would reparations accomplish? That Black people getting reparations, what would it accomplish?
It would advance this nation, our total nation. You got. It's like a athlete with a broken ankle, and until you repair that, the athlete can't be as effective as it could be. So it's not just about Black people; it's about this entire nation. We would become a great nation.
So time out. That changes everything. You're saying America would be far greater if it came back to the least of these to repair the damage that has been done. It lifts everyone up.
Yes, slavery and the Native American genocide are the two original sins of America. And until they address the spiritual harm done that and the physical and economic harm, this country's hamstrung. So imagine how great America has been with all these things in place. Imagine what we would be if we repaired those wounds.
That's powerful. That's very powerful. Thank you. Dr. John, what would reparations accomplish?
I don't think it would accomplish very much. I think it would give us a boost, but I don't think it would actually level the playing field. A boost to keep us quiet, but until we actually sit down and change ourselves, I don't see much changing. that also comes into play with the other side. It has to start with that conversation of bringing us together. And even
somebody's microphone, I'm hearing feedback. Other than Dr. John, everyone mute.
Yeah, that's what I would say. You know, just bringing us together to start the conversation. But I think it will give us a nice boost.
Okay, so then let me ask you this. So if reparations won't accomplish much, why give it?
I think it's just something.
Can't you take a vitamin C shot to get a boost?
I think it would give us a means to, it would save some people, but I don't think for the overall mass. When I'm thinking about Black people, I'm not thinking about just the ones that are doing well. I'm thinking about Black people as a whole. So that encompasses, you know, even people that are on the lower end of the echelon, and people all the way on the end. I think it would just give us a boost as a culture, as an overall. But I don't think it would accomplish much until the other side decides to change and recognize.
Okay, the Republican Party is going to be calling you because you will be their new spokesperson.
I am very conservative.
Pat, what would reparations accomplish?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, depending on how we go about it, it could either be not very much or it could be a lot. So I think that the foundation of it has to be built upon reversing some of the systemic issues that we have, right? And then on that foundation, if we inject reparative initiatives and throw reparative funds at things that are designed to produce producers, right? And then in that case, now you have America working for everybody. And I agree with David, the nation as a whole benefits from that.
Got it. Thank you. Brother James, what would reparations actually accomplish?
Bishop.
You're not going to like my answer, D. I think what reparations will accomplish is the reason why people are afraid to pay it. It will actually put African Americans in the driver's seat of this country. From a biblical standpoint, it says the first shall be last and the last shall be first. If you look at what African Americans have accomplished in this country today, with all of the systems designed against us, and to still see the African American community thriving like it is in different pockets, if you pay reparations and level the playing field, it will put African Americans in the driver's seat of this country. And that's the fear. That's the real underlying fear. That's why eugenics is taking place and things like that's the real fear.
So time the blank out. You're suggesting that the reason for white supremacy, which is an illusion, there's no facts to back it up. You're saying the reason for racism, the reason for Jim Crow laws, the reason for all of these systems that have been designed to destroy us was because the white man who have the power structure never wanted a level playing field because he knew if the playing field was level, the Black man and woman and family would surpass them and therefore leave them as second-class citizen, or?
Science is already showing that it is inevitable. It's going to happen. And that's the reason they're just trying to slow it down, but it's inevitable. Look at the science behind it. It is going to happen. The minority will one day be the majority.
Yeah. So then, why in the HE double toothpicks would the white man who's in the power structure, who's run this thing for 400 plus years, ever want to repair your broken Black cells, knowing that repairing you harms me? But they
don't. That's the reason. I said in the beginning, we're responsible for reparations, not them. Because remember, reparations in my definition is the repairing of broken systems. That's our job. It's like asking the cat to not kill the mouse. It's like the mouse asking the cat not to kill the mouse.
One of the challenges we have to realize, and it's a truth, is that the actual concept of race is a human construct, right? I just worked with a colleague who tried to explain American racism in China. And part of our challenge was trying to get them to, because they don't understand it because we made it up, so it's our thing. But the problem is, it's been 500 years that we've been operating on this idea that because I'm melanated, that somehow I have an inherently different characteristic than someone who's not. And so, first of all, you got a group of people that have always been the numerical minority on the world stage, if you're just going to categorize people by race. They use unfair advantage, some technological advantages, and blind luck in order to take over a part of the world that wasn't prepared for their onslaught. They created the myth of race in order to keep that going. And here's the thing, the greatest beneficiaries of racism isn't white people. We got to stop talking about white people. It's rich people who happen to be white. And the thing is, the bottom line is that in order for that structure to maintain, they have to take middle class and working class and poor whites and convince them that they are inherently better than the rest of us. If the rest of them ever realize that that's a lie, they're done. And if you want to example what happens when poor and working class whites just want to get ahead, just look at the immediate years after the Civil War. The Populist Party were mostly whites who left the Republican Party, who left the Democratic Party, and they got with blacks in order to move forward. And the poor whites who were losing power realized that if they go more than one generation with this coalition, their idea of white power was done. So rich whites convinced poor whites to get the middle class whites back on team. And that's how you got the backlash. So the bottom line is the reason why white people in general want to do this, because the average white person isn't interested in your oppression and they're not interested in your elevation. They want a peaceful nation to move forward in. And if they can be convinced that it's in their best interest to stop with the 500-year-old madness, they may not help as much as we need to help ourselves, but they will not put up the barriers that their ancestors put up.
Exactly.
Oh my God, I would love to have taken a class from you, Brother David. You are actually blowing my mind. Whenever I think of racism, I think of the ism in that, meaning that white folks want to keep the race just as it is. That's what racism is.
Wow.
To keep race just as it is. And I so agree with you totally on the fact that when we were enslaved, what they created in us was expertise. They created expert farmers, expert blacksmiths. They created expert cooks. They created expert carpenters. And so when the rich white man had no need for the poor white man,
right,
to him to do anything except to look over us. And that's what and then we talk about getting to be police. And so when they came, when slavery ended, they outlawed us from working because we were the experts.
Right.
And so they didn't want our expert, they wanted our labor, but not our expertise. And so when I have to totally disagree with you, brother John, on this. What would reparations do? It may not affect this generation, meaning that there's some generations that are going to do foolish things with the money. So I say I don't agree, but I do agree. It may not affect this generation in a positive manner, meaning there'll be a lot of foolishness that might go on with getting rich quick or getting money quick. But the generations to follow will learn from foolishness. People will see people spending money ignorantly and not investing wisely. You go straight to the Bible for the bridesmaids that used up their oil foolishly, and the bridesmaids that had their oil when the groomsmen came. There will be those who will foolishly spend up their oil, but they will be the wise ones who will have. And then I'll say this: when I often think of desegregation, I often think of the same classism that we talk about with white people. There's a classism in our society, in our Black community. When we talked about desegregation was not for me and my poor family. Desegregation was for the store owner down the street that didn't want to live around Negroes. He was the one rushing to go and be with the white folks in the suburbs, and they wouldn't let him go there. But poor Black people like my family and so many others, we had to stay in the ghetto. But what Black folks found out that ran out to the suburbs and got them a little piece of land and built them a house, the Bible is true when it said the poor will always be among us. I don't care where you go. I don't care how rich you are, you're going to still bring some ignorance with you. And that's what happened in our community. They sucked out a lot of our mentors. They sucked out a lot of our heroes, our school teachers and businessmen and people we could look up to. And they took that stuff to the suburb, but they still had foolishness following them. So I believe that we should get our reparations. We should get our cash. We should get our land. We should get our education. We should get everything we got coming to us. And those who are not going to use it wisely, so be it. But then that generation that don't use it wisely today, the next generation will follow suit.
And what's interesting about your comment, though, Hank, is that Dr. John mentioned the generation before him, meaning his father, wasn't there to provide an example, but he did pretty doggone good for himself. And I'm sure that his future generations are going to do equivalent or even greater than he did. So I do agree with that. That's a good point. That's a good point. I want to share one thing though, Hank, because you said one thing that we did learn from them was like excellent craftsmanship. I want to share one thing with you. Can you guys see this chart?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, let me show you this real quick. We didn't learn craftsmanship here. We came here because we were craftsmen. We built the pyramid, which is exact science, exact mathematics, exact technology. So if you look here, you got King Tutmos who built the pyramid. Now, right down here at the bottom is my black self in Egypt in the pyramid. So this is what happened, because I love to show my students these pictures. This is me, this is the Sphinx. So I decided to go down into the shaft of the pyramid. Yes. I wanted to walk down because when you look here at this picture, this is the shaft of the pyramid, because these people had already known trigonometry, calculus, and all of this stuff. When I got down into the shaft of the pyramids, the Egyptians were so powerful, they painted pictures of themselves because they knew one day some other people may come here and pretend like we had nothing to do with this. So then I asked my students, why is this person blue? First of all, who is this person? They say, we don't know. Is it an alien? I said, no, that's the lie that so-called Egyptologists tell our people, that aliens came to build the pyramid. No. So then the question is, why is Osiris, this god, blue? And I asked them this question, why is she blue? Why is she blue? Why is this person greenish blue? Because the original man, the Egyptians of 2, 3, 4, 6, 10, 12, 100,000 years ago looked like this. So when God reached in and dug in the dirt and said, let's make man, this is who he created. So therefore, hopefully when you guys are talking about reparations and education, hopefully we can educate our people to remind us of who we are, because in this country, we don't even know who we are as a people, because we don't even connect to our original people. All right.
You know, it's interesting, Dwayne. When I went to Egypt and got with the tour guides who have degrees in Egyptology, every time we went to the Valley of the Kings and Queens and Luxor, we went to the pyramids. After the Europeans and white Americans left, they would take us deeper into the thing. And when you go deeper in, you see like all these statues of Black people. So I said, why don't you show this on a tour? And their answer was, the Europeans and Americans get angry. And so we simply don't show them the truth of who built this because we're trying to make money, but we're sure you want to know. And so they knew what was up, but they also understood that in order for them to make their tourist money, they got to stop the story with the Greek and Roman occupation, because no white American or European was interested in Nubians. And so that's how deep these narratives go in terms of a global narrative to make people think that our history started in 1619 when somebody dragged us over here in some chains, when we've been here since the dawn of mankind.
We were here before Columbus got here.
Can I share one last point?
Yes.
As a minister, one of the other systems that we've got to change is the church.
Amen.
Because when the Bible tells us that God reached down and formed man from the dirt, I had to, as we were talking, I just thought, what color is dirt? What color is that? What color does it resemble?
It looked like Pat to me.
We have whitewashed our Savior for years. I grew up in Catholic school, and we grew up thinking that our Lord and Savior didn't look like us. But then then you read the Bible and say he has feet of bronze, hair like wool. And that looked like my grandfather. And so that's part of the system that we just got to change. It's time for us to tell the unadulterated, unfiltered truth.
And our greatness doesn't diminish anybody else. I can be great and you can be great.
Exactly.
You know?
I totally agree. And that's what I was.
So hold on. Hair of wool? Is that the wool?
You know what I'm saying?
That's the wool? That's the bronze.
Exactly.
Huh. Okay, keep going.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Is part of reparations, I think, should be history. They should be forced to learn real history and not this whitewashed version of history that has been perpetrated upon the American minds. Because what we watch on a daily basis is propaganda. Television is propaganda, and it's the propaganda of the white man to somehow show this country and all over the world that one white man is going to suddenly save the world. He's going to save the world for his daughter. He's going to save the world for his son. He's going to save the world for his wife. He's going to somehow miraculously walk into a room and without any forethought, without any indication, he's going to smack the hell out of the right person. He's going to suddenly be the superhero and he's going to solve the problem. And we have to stop that foolishness right there. I think that we need to look at Hollywood and stop Hollywood from perpetrating the fraud that somehow the white man is going to save us. It is not just the white man don't love his son, his daughter, his woman no more than I love mine. And I could be the same damn superhero he could be. As soon as we start doing that kind of stuff and stop letting these programs, these television programs perpetrate this fraud upon the American people and our society as a whole. And we need to teach real history in our classrooms. White kids need to understand who created what, who started what, who saved what. And that is the problem. And so all of these corporations that want to suddenly get woke, all these corporations that want to suddenly start feeling they're somehow want to connect with blackness, start with your damn history. Tell your history. Tell how you became this multi-billion-dollar corporations off the back of some black man who discovered this, some black man or woman who discovered that. That's what we need to start with. We need to start. All these people that want to come out with these damn commercials, they want to cancel Ancient Mama. Okay, you can cancel Ancient Mama's image, but talk about how she came up with the recipe. You want to talk about Jack Daniels, who came up with the recipe. Talk about the railroad company. Should talk about the cotton, Eli Whitney. We can go on and on and on about our contributions to this society. And I think these corporations that are reaping the benefit off of all of our inventions and our knowledge should be the first ones to step up and say, we are rich because.
Now, let me say this. Hey, I got some great news for you. I literally just recorded the Black series. And in the Black series, it's the Black Panther that's going to break down what that movie is really about. It's the Black series, the power of truthful history. It's police and community, and it is the white lie. And it is really going to address everything you said. So digitally speaking, it's going to be for schools, for companies. Now, David says something interesting, and I know y'all like, how does Negro pulling up all this stuff to share? I want to show you guys this real quick. David mentioned when he went to Egypt. So if you go to Egypt today, I showed you earlier the colors that you saw, the beautiful, vivid colors. What white supremacy is doing in Egypt is they're sandblasting the pyramid. They sandblasting all the colors off the walls. So when you go to Egypt today, you will not see yourself. So to David's point, this is one of the Nubian brothers that give the tour. He did the exact same thing for me too, David, as he said, you want to see more. He tapped my hand and he tapped his hand saying, look at your color, look at my color, we're the same. So he gave us a tour that the other people didn't see. Now, I'm not going to tell you about Osiris and the Immaculate Conception right here, because that will stir up something else that we ain't going to talk about. But if you look at these colors here, it's so vivid that who the original Egyptians were. But this is the lie that they tell in school, that they don't want us to know who our history is So I agree. These are the Europeans. So when I went there, one of them asked me, "What are you doing here?" And I smiled and I looked back and I said, "Wait, the real question is, what are you doing here?" Y'all see?
Right.
So I'm telling you, that is going to happen, Henry McGee. So gentlemen, we have to get ready to wrap this up. I think we shared a lot of wonderful information. So I'm going to ask you guys in closing, if you have any final remarks, whether it's reparations, whether it's the need of reparations, whether it's to speak to our white brothers and sisters, because right now we're at a time that we've never been at before. When they did a polling on policing, the first time in the history of the planet Earth, the majority of blacks and whites believe that there's a systematic problem with policing in America. 94% believe there's a systematic problem of black people, 75% of Hispanic people, and actually 55% of white people believed it. 92% of Democrats believed it. 55% of Republicans believed it. So we're at a point now that white older people are seeing their kids in the street with our kids. So if there's going to be a shift in consciousness, if there's going to be a time where we can really move the needle, the time is now. We may not ever get this time again. So I want you guys to speak to our white brothers and sisters who may be watching. Why is reparations necessary? Speak to them, because they're the ones who got to also be a part of the whole system as well. We'll start with Dr. John, and then we're going to continue.
Well, one of the things that I will say too is that we in this conversation, I saw a lot of the conversations go back to education. A lot of times too, we have to educate even in the process of how we came to this country. We just didn't come here and we were slaves. You know, we were kings and stuff. So reparations to me goes back to the education system, rewriting those textbooks, putting in new things, seeing more black teachers in these classrooms, not only just in black classrooms, but in white classrooms as well. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for strong black teachers. Absolutely. You know, those are the biggest impacts that I had on my life. So the other thing too that I would say is healthcare. You cannot negate healthcare when it comes to this. We are dying at such a rate that and it's not even talked about. We're talking about, you know, how can we do it? There's money. Let's talk about healthcare. Let's talk about when a white person has a stroke and a black person has a stroke, who has the worst outcome? Black people. And it's unanimous, especially in the Chicagoland area, and I'm pretty sure it's around the South. Now, when you go further south, the numbers even get worse because the number one, the lack of education on how to eat properly, do these different things, not even education. The other thing I will say too is this, is that if it was for that, we have to learn. I want white people to step back and actually almost empathize, look into the eyes of what it would look like to be a black man. You know, it's already stressful. A lot of us, to be honest, we suffer from PTSD and it's not even diagnosed. The just amount of pressure. We brought up a point last night. You were riding with someone in the car. You see the video on Ahmaud Arbery. You get out the car. You like, man, so other people don't understand that. Yeah. You know, but I have a lot of respect for the person because they were able to sit back and say, hey, let's analyze this. Let me educate myself. You know, I have white patients coming in to me and they said, Doc, I've been listening to podcasts. I didn't know. If you need anything, let me know. I'm here to support you. I'm here to support this. You know, and and you're seeing more of that starting to come out of this. And I would like to see even more.
So you're saying, although you've had white patients before, it seems like now they see you, they're empathizing with you like never before versus I'm just coming to get a service and I'm out.
They're coming now and they're like, man, you know, I didn't know a lot of this stuff has been the thought, and I've seen some stuff and I grew up in this neighborhood and I've seen that, but I never really thought about it the way that it's being presented today. And when you see a lot of these demonstrations, it's waking up and it's ruffling a lot of people's feathers. So now you have no choice not to pay attention to it. And so you're saying, like, I have people saying, man, I'm sorry.
Got it.
I'm sorry for different things. I didn't have anything to do with it. And everybody said, I didn't have anything to do with it. But at the end of the day, you benefited from it.
Benefited from it. And that is white privilege. You benefit. You didn't have to enslave my great-great-great-grandparents, but you benefited from the systems that did, because racism is a system designed to keep one race down. Pat, what would you say?
One more point. Can I say one more point?
Yeah, absolutely.
One more point. And I will say this too. And one of the things is the way that we are demasculinizing the black male is horrendous. I mean, we need to change the narrative of what Black males look like. You know, and I don't want to see any other organizations jumping on the bandwagon of Black Lives Matter and the Black movement trying to actually help us with reparations when they're attaching, oh, we want civil rights too. This is a clear issue that goes back to slavery, not something that's coming out and then all of a sudden now everybody's being discriminated against. We want equal things. This is something that's been done to Black people over and over again, and this is not a time to jump on the bandwagon.
So you're saying we're not trying to get reparations for minorities, for other communities. We're talking about reparations for the people who were enslaved for 250 years, for the people who went through 99 years of Jim Crow, for the people who went through Black codes and another 50 years of Jim Crow. So then if you are a white woman and you're considered a minority today, you don't fit that category. No. So then if you are whatever immigrant that may be coming over and you're a minority, you don't fit that category. Love my LGBTQ, whatever else, brothers and sisters, but if you didn't fit that category, you're not in that category. So we're not going to confuse, we're not going to conflate everybody's minority pain with Black pain and suffering. So therefore, pause, wait until the reparations finish, and then you come in so that you don't usurp anything that's for a particular group.
Because it waters down what we're trying to accomplish.
They benefit anyway. They benefit regardless of whether we let them in or not. They always benefit.
Well, since you just started, Hank, why don't you give your final words to our white brothers and sisters?
All right, yeah. I mean, I think I read an article the other day. It was written by an Indian guy, Pakistani guy.
Yes.
He talked about how his minority status, how he benefited from the civil rights era of Black folks and all the laws that have been put in place. Now, even though he does not live in our community, he lives in the white man's community. But he benefited from all the laws that were put in place to benefit us. And so all the rest of the minorities that want to claim minority status, and I don't mean claim minority status in a disparaging manner, but all those other minorities, they will benefit from whatever reparations we do get. This is what I would say to the white man, and how this would benefit the white man. We are all in the same boat, and if you get that, they get that through their head, and they get an image of us all being in the same boat, and we're all rowing in this boat. But we're rowing, but the Black man does not have an oar to row, and so we are slowly going in circles in this country because the white man refuses to give the Black man an oar to row, to help move this country forward, to help progress this country. And if they would give us an oar, we would move this country forward in such a way that it would make this country great. It would make this country great, peaceful. You could go to any neighborhood, you could go to any community, you can go to, you could partake of any culture, and it would just be peaceful. But the white man's desire to be this overseer, to be this world police, to be this parasitical creature that constantly comes into other cultures and other countries and somehow wants to suck out all the natural resources from that country, instead of working in partnership with those other people and other cultures and other countries. It constantly wants to do the take. And in this country, it is taken so much that it's the only somebody rowing the boat. And the boat is going in the same circle. But if it would give other minorities, it would give the Black man an oar so that we could then also row the boat with them, we would go a whole lot further. And that's my 2 cents for the white man. Reparations is needed so we can get an oar, so we can row this boat together and push America forward.
Man, you make me want to get back on my boat, Black man. God dog. That was a beautiful analogy where people can see progress of that. My brother, strong King Patrick, what do you say to our white brothers and sisters?
Well, I mean, I would say that as you listen to this conversation, right, the empathetic side in me can understand how some of the things we talk about sound like people are asking for a handout, or sound like all of these talking points that you often hear from the right, okay? But what I would encourage somebody who what I would encourage somebody who hears that when they hear us speaking to do is to educate yourself on the historical context of how we got to this point right here, because context is everything. The context that we're dealing with is a context wherein we live in a capitalistic society. We were released into the capitalistic society without the ability to even compete for the means of production. And so when that happens, and it happens over a period of time, those who have those means of production is going to compound itself. And so when we talk about context, I think it's important that our educational system, we seize this opportunity that we have right now, because as you said, everybody is beginning to wake up and understand that there's a real issue here, right? People are not doing what they're doing right now in the streets for nothing. There's something there. And what I would say to you is if you do not understand it, continue to seek out that answer. And as you do, you will see that there's a context that needs to be addressed. If we do not address it, it will just continue to fester. We've had uprisings in the 90s with Rodney King. We had uprisings previously. There was another LA riot back in whenever it was the 60s or whatever.
Yeah.
Some of the same issues still unresolved, and they're plentiful. I mean, it's more than just police genocide. And so what I would say to those people is education is the key. And what I would say to everybody is let's seize this opportunity to change the curriculum that we're taught in school so that we can all be afforded this information so that next generation, we don't have to convince people as to why this is necessary.
Absolutely. Thank you, King David. King David.
I would say to many white communities that you don't have as much to be afraid about as you would like to think. The bottom line is, again, you cannot fear a Black planet more than you fear an unjust one. I shared with you guys last night, a couple of you guys last night, just sort of a personal story to contextualize these issues. All 16 of my great-great-grandparents were enslaved. I was blessed enough to be able to get some genealogical information, and it stops at my great-great-grand, at my ninth generation great-grandparents, but my 16 great-grandparents were all in North Carolina, Alabama, and Georgia plantations. I think about my North Carolina branch of my family that was in Wilmington, North Carolina, which was a majority Black city in the late. It was run by the Black GOP. It had its own newspaper, and white people in 1898 didn't like it, burned Black Wilmington down, and that part of my family moved. Ironically, they moved to Oklahoma, where 30 years later, they also were run out. And my great-grandfather was one of those people impacted. And so as an individual, I say the fact that most Americans don't know that.
Tulsa. Oh, they moved from Wilmington to Tulsa.
Yeah. So we got caught both ways. And so my family lore knows that we have been entrepreneurial. We had banks, we had land, and twice in one branch of my family's history, whites being jealous of autonomous Black power destroyed the city. And yet we're still here. Yet my father served in World War II. My grandfather served in World War I. My uncle served in Korea and in Vietnam. My brother served in the Army. He is a U.S. Marshal to this day. I have police officers in my family. And I say that and say that I am truly an American. I have blood and roots here for over 200 years, and Native blood has been here for 2,000 years. And if someone like me and my family wanted to destroy white people, we would have done it decades ago, generations ago. And so this idea that if you simply give Black people what we've earned over the last several hundred years, that it would end you or you don't get to be great is a lie. Just allow us to do what Thomas Jefferson, right, that slave-holding great man who designed much of our democracy, but also owned and slept with slaves, said all men are created equal, endowed with certain inalienable rights. And the thing is, I'm a man, we're men, and we all serve the same God, and we just want the opportunity to live right? And pursue our happiness. And it won't be so bad. So I would tell white America, chill out, let us get back on the wagon.
You know, this is amazing, man. As you were talking, I was just imagining, what if the ancestors could see us, could hear us, could feel us, with all of the lashes that they got. Some of them were torn from their families, their children were taken, they were beaten, were enslaved and sold in different, if they could just knew. But I have to believe though, that they had the hope that one day our people will experience the freedom. And before I go to King James and have him to give, you were saying something that made me, and this is a part of the series that I was sharing with Hank earlier. Oh, right here, let me go. This is a part of the White Lie. So this is the part of the White Lie series. Let me show you this real quick. Because of the White Lie, these are some of the riots and places that white people burned to the ground because Blacks had successful businesses. And we don't talk about this, but if we're talking about reparations, this is also should be an absolute in the front of the list. Wilmington, you just mentioned this. These were your people.
That ran my entire family out of Wilmington.
Then we had Atlanta race riots. Then we had this Birth of a Nation, this movie that glorified the Klan and demonized Black men. Then from there, we had the Springfield race riots, where a white woman pretended that this Black man was trying to get at her, and then the white man went crazy. We had the Chicago race riots, and then we had Tulsa. So your family is in two of these doggone race riots.
Yeah.
Then we had Rosewood, where they burned Black businesses down. And then today we still got Barbecue Becky. We still got Permit. We still got the White Lie that's being perpetrated. So I'm hearing what you're saying is we have no history of destroying and killing and burning and looting and mass destruction of white people. They have a history of doing that to us.
Absolutely.
And I think, like the sister said, they had better be happy and fortunate that we're not looking for revenge for your sins.
We're looking for justice, not revenge.
Justice and to be left alone. That's right. King James, what is your message? Because you got billionaire white friends and they own you all the time. What do we do, Bishop? So what is your message? But you need to unmute yourself before you start.
So my message is a little bit different from the gentleman on this call. First of all, I want to thank everybody on this call. My message to them is, you've been lied to. And it must suck to have been lied to. I typically say things that are unpopular. As a Black minister, I remember what it felt like when I discovered that I was being lied to about paying tithes in modern day Christianity. I remember what that felt like. And so I tend to understand your pain that you've been lied to. But what I did with the information was I went and started learning and researching everything on my own. So to my friends, number one, I'm going to empathize with you because I know a lot of what we're saying today on this call hurts. Because you probably, and your family probably, did not directly own slaves. You didn't do a lot of what we're talking about here. But to remain ignorant is only going to hurt yourself further. And so what I would ask you to do, I would ask you to go and get the information for yourself. Don't take our word for anything.
What information and where did they get it?
Go look up the truth about how the country was built. Go look up the truth about who invented what. Go even look up the truth about what your Lord and Savior looked like. Go look up the truth for yourself. We're now in an age of information where it's readily at your fingertips. If you want to know why your sons and daughters are joining the movement, it is because they have done the research for themselves and they have realized they've been lied to.
And what was the lie?
The lie is that this country was built by white men. Because listen, white women, you too are in an oppressed group that you're just coming out of. And so I ask all of you to go do the research for yourself. And what I have found is when I've challenged my friends to do this for themselves, they have come back with a completely different attitude, with a completely different mindset. I have so many allies now, just, I can't say just as, but almost as angry as me. I now don't get the question, why does that bother you so much? I am now getting, this is bothering me too.
And listen, your allies, they fight very differently because they have more resources and more oars to paddle that boat to be able to get further down.
One of the things I share with some of my allies is, listen, the African-American community, we're not talking to the president anymore. We're not talking to Congress. We're not talking to the government. We're talking to you. We're coming to your neighborhood, because when you get angry, you will do something about it differently than we will, because you got different resources. So I'm challenging all of my white brothers and sisters, those who say they believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, to go don't take any of our words for it. Go do the homework for yourself. Go look at the textbook, go look at the Bible, and then go Google it. I tell my kids all that, Google it for yourself. I've had people Google the race riots. I've had people Google the burning down in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they came back and said, I did not know. And so the next question after you do the research is, now that you know, will you join the movement? Will you join the movement? If you call yourself my friend, and if you say you love me, that answer is already, the answer is an undoubted yes. And if the answer is no, it was good to know you.
So that's your ultimatum for your friends.
That's my ultimatum for anybody who calls themselves a Christian of any color. Of any color. You cannot having the information. So I cannot go after you if you don't have the information. You cannot, after having the information, sit back and think this is right.
Okay. So for your Christian friends, the very last share that I want to share is right here. Hold on. For those that, because you told them to go to the Bible, I will help you out. It says, Genesis 2:13, and the name of the second river was the Gihon, that compasseth the whole land of Ethiopia. For your friends who don't know, Ethiopia is not up here in Spain or Italy. Ethiopia is not in Saudi Arabia, but Ethiopia is right here. And if I may, for one quick second, because I know you guys are going to share, let me go to my Black Panther series. I'm telling y'all, I've been doing some work because I want to liberate the people. So when we look at Ethiopia, these are Ethiopians. So therefore, if the land was here and the people were here that moved from Ethiopia, because the Nile went from the south to the north, and therefore the Egyptians looked like this when Jesus went to relax and to blend in. These are the people he was blending in with. So I just wanted to be able to give a visual for your friends, Brother James, so that, you know, when they get ready to go and study as you have given them that charge, then they will know, at least give them a little help out on that category.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have been lied to. Just listen to the words. How does one discover a country where people were already inhabitants of? You cannot discover. That would be the equivalent of me coming to your home and say, I have discovered it.
If you're trying to convince me that Christopher Columbus did not sail the Great Blue in 1492 and discover Indians, we're going to cancel this whole thing right now, and we're going to cancel it. Are you suggesting that Christopher Columbus didn't discover Indians?
I'm not suggesting it. History suggests it.
My Lord, I've been lied to too. God dog, I've been hoodwinked and bamboozled. So for my beautiful people who are still here, and I'm getting texts, they saying, this is excellent. This is excellent. Keep it going. We ain't got, hey, these are married men with families, with wives, with children. They don't have time to be here all night. I want to thank King David. I want to thank King Henry. I want to thank King John, King Pat, and King James. Listen, everyone, for those of you who've been doubting that there are no good Black men out here, that they don't care about themselves, about their families, and about their communities, this is just a small group of my guys. Just a real, I can double up and triple up and have a whole different group. The last thing I want to say is to Hollywood, can you give us real images, or else, like the other brother said, just Tyler Perry, can you give us images of strong, intelligent, caring Black men? Because there's a bunch of us out here, but nobody's listening to us. We're almost becoming like extinct dinosaurs. We are here. We love our people. We love our family. We are thinkers. We are feelers. We are communicators. We are moral men. We have integrity. We operate in truth. This is who we are. So thank you so very much for joining us. Thank you for listening to Reparations. So this is why we got to have these conversations. Next week on Conversations with DB, we have Jocelyn Jones, powerful sister. She's going to be talking about grief. Anybody want to say anything before we get ready to release you to your families and your homes? Anyone else? You guys are good?
You're good.
Perfect.
Love you guys. Appreciate you.
Man, I love y'all so much. Thank you, brothers.
God bless.
I love y'all. I'm glad to see some Black men smiling instead of mean mugging. Hank, you be safe. I'm going to see you in a couple of weeks, brother. I will be back to the other home. Love y'all very much, man.
All right. Take care, man.
God bless. Take care.